How were national parks in Thailand initially established? Well, it all started with a conversationist walking on foot into the forest, surveying the area, viewing the surroundings through a pair of binoculars, and finally putting up a sign bearing the official Garuda emblem and announcing the area as a national park. From that starting point, with a single sign saying that the natural resources in these areas should be preserved and kept undamaged, unchanged. There are now 147 national parks around Thailand.
วิธีเดียวที่จะให้ป่าอยู่ได้ก็คือการรีบประกาศเขตรักษาสัตว์ป่าและอุทยานชาติให้ได้มากที่สุดเพื่อแข่งแย่งกับพวกที่ทำป่าสัมปทานแต่ในปัจจุบันป่าพวกนี้เป็นป่าไม้ที่เหลืออยู่ที่เป็นทรัพยากรที่มีคุณค่ายิ่งต่อประเทศ
The inspiration for Thailand's first national park was Yellowstone in the United States, which was the first national park in the world. Yellowstone was established in 1872, and since then it has served as the model for national parks in many other countries. What do you think would have happened if there hadn't been this kind of model upon which to base the establishment of a national park? Before national parks were set up in Thailand, a small group of environmental conservationists pressured the government to pay more attention to preserving the country's natural resources. Then, Prime Minister Field Marshal Sarit Thanarat was interested in the endeavor and ordered the establishment of a national park committee whose job was to select and set up 14 forest areas as national parks. Initially, officials surveyed the areas proposed as national parks and passed the National Parks Act of 1961 into law with the objective of protecting and preserving these existing natural resources. A year later, in 1962, Khao Yai was designated the Khao Yai National Park, making it the first national park in Thailand. By 1977, a total of 14 national parks had been established. With the need to survey forest areas throughout the country in order to identify further potential national parks, the Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperatives found it necessary to create a national park division under the Royal Forest Department. The division had to compete with locals trying to find more land to earn a living from, and the granting of concessions on forest land for logging. At the time, the work of the National Park Division was focused only on preserving pristine forest and natural resources. Later on, international conservation knowledge was brought into Thailand to help manage its national parks. From just inspecting forest areas, national park chiefs had to learn international conservation methodology. This led to the creation of an initial plan on managing national parks and the first nationwide seminar of national park chiefs in 1984. Around this time, a further 36 national parks were named. This period of developing national parks in Thailand coincided with a time during which the country was recovering economically through tourism growth. Tourism became the main driving force of the economy, and 1987 was declared Visit Thailand Year. This prompted effort to develop environmental tourist attractions to generate revenue for the country. The various national parks in the country started managing their areas and implementing the academic knowledge they had been accumulating since 1984. This led to the development of tourist service centers, basic infrastructure, waste collection, toilets, and accessible and convenient transportation routes to the parks. In 1988, a tragic landslide at Ban Katun, near the Khao Lung National Park, triggered a flash flood. The flood felled trees, damaged property, and claimed many lives. This incident raised the awareness of the importance of natural resources conservation, brought an end to the logging concessions that had been granted throughout the country, and the government quickly announced the creation of another 52 new national parks. The increased interest in national parks and the role of national park officials led to the involvement of local communities in preserving and managing national parks. In 2001, an initiative was launched to involve local communities in the management of 6 national parks. In 2002, state reform led to the restructuring of national park work, and national parks were relocated under the jurisdiction of the Department of National Parks, Wildlife and Plant Conservation under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. This was followed by a period in which national park management was reviewed, and a general model was set up for all national parks to base their work on. Visiting national parks is still an activity that attracts the attention of tourists, and the number of visitors are on the rise every year. To lessen the impact of tourism on national parks, officials decided to limit the numbers of visitors at 10 locations. The management of national parks has also shifted from each one working independently to neighboring parks joining together to set up what is called a complex. Officials started drafting plans to manage parks based on region, and there have been efforts to register regional national parks as a World Natural Heritage Sites. The Dong Phaya Yen Khao Yai Forest was successfully registered as such a site in 2005. In the near future, the Kaeng Krachan Forest will also be registered as a World Natural Heritage Site. That said, up to now, the management of national parks may not have addressed global environmental problems such as climate change and the loss of ecological diversity. Is it time for conservationists to step into the new millennium and help to revive the environment for sustainable living? In the 21st century, the ASEAN community will be playing a larger role in this area. Thailand's national parks will not be alone in the efforts to preserve forests and natural resources. Are you ready to adopt international practices and become a model and a hub for national park management in the ASEAN and Asian regions?